Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm going to be reacting to what is Samkhya and yoga philosophy. I don't think I said that first one correctly, but I think I got the second one. Alright, so this is the second third of the six schools of Eastern philosophy, Hindu philosophy. I heard there was more though, but maybe these are the major ones. So let's go ahead and get started.
Namaste everyone, this is Vishwa again. So today I'm going to talk about Samkhya and yoga philosophy. So let's understand what is Samkhya and yoga philosophy today. One is the school of rational dualism and other is the school of practice.
Well, I guess I forgot to mention. I wanted to mention this. So my bias or my state right now is a dualist. Just because that's my initial state before even knowing about this non-duality. So that's how I believe most people believe, in that we are in fact all different. And this non-duality is something new to me, and it's going to be probably something new to a lot of people. So even after hearing the non-duality, I still I still believe in the duality part. So rational duality, that's where I'm at the moment. But I still want to hear more of the non-duality. I'm still trying to rationalize the duality portion in my mind, and I want to talk about that, but it'll be in a different video. So let's go ahead and continue on.
Many people practice yoga, but they don't have much foundation of the philosophy. Yoga is just not the asana practice, much more and beyond that. So it's important to know that what is the basic philosophy of yoga. So first I'm going to start with Samkhya philosophy, which is the foundation of yoga philosophy. So let's take the Samkhya philosophy first, the school of rational dualism. So Samkhya means knowledge or gyan. Literally, Samkhya means number or that which sums up. Having said that, it's also called the mother of mathematics, Ayurveda, and yoga. Yes, the foundation of yoga philosophy is Samkhya theory. And it is also used in Tantra philosophy. When I will talk about Tantra later at some point, you will see how the Samkhya philosophy fits in. The founder of this Samkhya philosophy is sage Kapila. The importance of Kapila is such that Krishna in Bhagavad Gita mentions his name, that in the sages he is Kapila. So Kapila wrote Samkhya Sutra containing 526 sutras around 700 BC. However, the original text got lost and it is not available today. But one of the disciples in that tradition wrote the commentary on it, and the name of that text was Samkhya Karika. And that's how this information retained and got passed down, and we have it available today. Now let's go into the main features of Samkhya philosophy and discover that what Samkhya deals about, the creation and everything else. So Samkhya philosophy is a dualistic theory. It's called realistic dualism. So what do you mean by Samkhya dualistic theory? So to understand the dualism, understand like day and night, good and bad, just opposite in nature, mother and father. This is just for understanding, but in Samkhya, in the same way, there are two main principles, and they are called Prakriti and Purusha. In Tantra, the same Purusha and Prakriti take a different understanding. One becomes Shiva and other becomes Shakti. However, keeping the scope right here in the Samkhya, I will only refer Purusha and Prakriti. So now I'm going to talk about the two main principles or two main objects which must be known in order to fully understand the universe according to Samkhya philosophy. And the first principle is called Purusha, or the consciousness. And the second is Prakriti, or unconscious principle, which is also called nature. It's said that Purusha is like the knower, pure consciousness, or ultimate truth, which is the energy, but it is choiceless. However, Prakriti is like the known, which we all can see and feel in this nature, in this creation, which is primordial will, primordial matter, and the creative potential of the Purusha. That is awareness with choice. But Prakriti cannot exist without Purusha. But Purusha can exist without Prakriti. The root cause of this entire universe is Prakriti, not Purusha, according to Samkhya philosophy. So now you know that the Prakriti is the mother of the whole creation. So let's understand the components of Prakriti, or the nature. So Prakriti has 24 components, and including the Prakriti. So as you can see on the diagram, Prakriti itself has 3 inherent components, which is called 3 guna. The lightness, which is sattva, activity, which is rajas, and inertia, which is tamas. When these 3 qualities stays in equilibrium, the nature stays unmanifested. But when this equilibrium gets disturbed, nature comes in manifestation. So now you can ask the question, how this equilibrium gets disturbed? That happens because when a Purusha comes in contact of Prakriti. So just to give you a metaphor, assume the Purusha like the father and the Prakriti is like the mother. So when the father comes in touch with the Prakriti, or the mother becomes pregnant and the equilibrium gets disturbed. And thus the mother gives the birth of the next 23 components. And these 23 components are nothing but the part of the Prakriti.
I don't know if that's how birth works. Nah, just joking. But that's I don't know if that explanation was good. I kind of get it. It's just the fact that he said that consciousness, or Purusha, is required for Prakriti, or nature, to exist, I believe, but not the other way around. And then when Purusha interacts with Prakriti, it creates the 23 components, which is what he just said. The metaphor he used was, I don't know, I mean, I guess. But alright, let's continue on.
So the very first thing which is born out of this unequilibrium state is the Mahat, the cosmic intelligence. And on an individual level, it is called the Buddhi, or intellect. Out of that, the next thing is born is Ahankara, or you can call it I amness, or false ego. Now, this Ahankara, since this is born out of the nature, so it also contains the quality of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So there are 3 kinds of ahankara inherently in this box, which is sattvic ahankara, rajasic ahankara, and tamasic ahankara.
Sorry, I wanted to pause a little bit earlier, but so the I-ness is basically, if I'm associating this with what Swami was talking about, how the waker, the dreamer, and the sleep nothingness, I believe. Which is kind of weird. This is supposed to be a dualistic point of view, but I guess maybe those two can have similarities. It's just the only difference may be the fact that everything being the same, the only difference is whether everyone's the same or everyone's different? Duality versus non-duality.
So Sattvic Ahamkara gives the birth of mind or manas through which we perceive things. From the Sattvic Ahamkara again we have the 5 sense organs, 5 organ of actions. And the Rajasic
Okay, 5 organs of actions. Mouth to talk, arms to touch, legs to walk. Genitals. I don't know what you do with those. Elimination. Oh, waste. That's weird. 5 organs of action. Oh, okay. So basically, the talk, to grab, to move, to procreate, and to eliminate waste. I guess eyes are not a organ of action. What else? Okay.
Ahankara is nothing but is the movement between Sattvic and Tamasic. However, the Tamasic Ahankara gives birth to other 10 elements. 5 of them are the subtle elements through which we can hear the sound, we can touch, we can see the form, we can taste and smell through the nose. And then the 5 gross elements, which the space, air, fire, water, and earth.
Why is it called gross though? It's kind of weird. Gross, at least to me, means like something nasty, like or the other, or elimination. Well, wait. Okay, that's weird. So the 5 sense organs kind of looks like it equivalates to the 5 subtle elements: ear, sound, skin, touch, eyes, form. Basically, you can see the form, tongue, taste, and nose, smell. And then you look at the Karmendriya, mouth, arms, legs, genitalia, elimination. Mouth to space, arms to air, legs to fire, genitalia to water, elimination to earth. So that doesn't quite equivalent out. So that's kind of wonder why that is. I mean, the top ones seem to match. I would assume the second one does too, but maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't.
So, including the nature, these are 24 components of the Prakriti. So now I'm going to talk about the practical teachings of Samkhya, in which it talks about the mind, that mind is the cause of our bliss into the misery. So now let's talk about the practical teachings of Samkhya philosophy. Samkhya says that it is mind which turns one's bliss into misery by just its projection. So Samkhya emphasizes to polishing the mind to filter the right knowledge. So it's actually focusing on the Jnana Yoga, the knowledge. It discourages the external rituals because people perform without understanding of its true significance. It also reminds to examine one's thinking process, to purify and develop proper attitude towards objects of senses, to minimize the attachment and aversions.
I will say that sounds like Buddha a little bit to me, at least from my world religions class. So that's how my first understanding of Eastern, well, it would be called Eastern religion, Buddhism. Even though I like to believe it to be a way of life, and it is to me a way of life, not a religion. But the thing that I learned from Buddhism in that class is the fact that you give, to shorten up, give 110%, but expect nothing from it, which is what I do try to live by. So basically, if I put a lot of work into something and nothing comes out of it, it's no big deal. It's hard to do that though, honestly. I will always feel emotion, but I try to understand it, and it doesn't necessarily last forever. That just makes me human, I guess. It's like, oh, it doesn't haunt you for the rest of your life. Well, it does, but it doesn't happen too often. So that's what I'm getting from there. Is the fact that remind the examination one's thinking process to purify and develop proper attitude towards objects of the senses to minimize attachment and aversion. Well, objects to the senses, your memory. Wait. Well, I guess I kind of like doing speech or creating something. It's not necessarily. Well, I guess it is object to the senses, yeah. So yeah, minimize attachment and aversion. So basically given 110% and just expect nothing from it. It's kind of the way, like I said, I live by that because I always tell people to, you know, what did I tell people? I actually had it in my mind, I just went blank on it. Well, that's what you get for just doing it on the spot. Well, anyways, just give it all you got, but don't expect anything out of it, you know. Expect the worst, hope for the best. That's it. So that if the worst happens, you were expecting it, but if the best happens, then, well, you were hoping for it.
Because all our life, we are just running around either towards attachment or running away from the aversions.
Oh.
And lastly, it also advises to not run away from the world, but have perfect mental control to stay in control during ups and downs of the life.
I try to do that. I do it decent for the most part.
So next I want to talk about the theory of causation of Samkhya philosophy. I referred to this theory in my previous video in Nyaya and Vaisheshika. Both of them rejects or refutes this theory. So what is this theory? This theory says that the effect pre-existed in the cause before manifestation. So for example, when a pot is prepared out of clay, the pot already existed in the clay, though in a potential form. So basically it says the main logic behind this theory is something can never be produced out of nothing.
That is a much better way of saying it. That's exactly what I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but with the discussion with Richard Dawkins was talking about how everything has a spirit, where the statue has a spirit. What's the statue spirit? The guy that made the statue and the rock that he used to make the statue. That's the spirit. So basically, like he's saying right here, or the example he gave was the clay pot. The clay itself had the pot all along, but you can't. But the example that he gave about the fact that something cannot be created from nothing. Alchemy, kind of. But anyways, yeah, that's actually a very good way of explaining it. Than saying that the clay itself had the pot in it. You know, it's a. I guess I don't know if a lot of people understand it that way, but I didn't quite understand it that way. But if the true meaning of that is the fact that something cannot come from nothing, then absolutely, the potential is there. Well, there's a lot of potential everywhere.
So the original cause of everything is seen as Prakriti. So that is the core principle of Samkhya. And from here we're going to further move into yoga philosophy, and we will understand what yoga philosophy is, how the relationship comes with Samkhya, and then what are the differences and similarity. Just to mention here that Samkhya does not believe in God. We will come to know how and what are the reasons they give that not to accept the existence of God. So let's dive into yoga philosophy now. And yoga is called a school of practice because it emphasizes on practice.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think it makes sense, but it's kind of like I call this swimming pool because you swim in it. I mean, yeah. I'll call this sitting wood because you sit on it. I'm sorry. It's just I figured he was going to go and like because they want to encourage people to go and practice what they believe or practice what they think. Okay, but it says It's called practice because you practice. It's called cup because it's a cup. No, you don't say it's a cup because it's circular. It's it's cone shape and it holds stuff. No, it's a cup because it's a cup. It's a phone because it's a phone. You don't tell it why it is a phone, except to just say it's a phone because it's a phone.
The yoga word comes from yuj, the root word use, that means to yoke or to unite, and it also means to concentrate. The yoga, what I'm going to cover here, is authored by or compiled by Patanjali. However, yoga existed much before that. So yoga, the word yoga, the practices of yoga are found in Rig Veda. It is found in Tantra. It is found in Upanishads. It is found in Bhagavad Gita and many other scriptures. So yoga is technically attributed to Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha word is used an aspect of God. But here Patanjali was given the credit because he is the one, the most intelligent person, the way how he took all the knowledge of yoga and compiled in a very systematic way, and that's what we are going to understand here. This compilation was done by him around 200 BC. Text he wrote was called Yoga Sutra or Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, containing 196 sutras. So let's see the main features of yoga philosophy. The very second sutra of Yoga Sutra of Patanjali says Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The definition of yoga, it says the complete mastery over the modification of the mind is called yoga. So now you can understand that this philosophy deals with the mind. It says that all the suffering, all the pain, all the pleasure happens because the modifications of the mind. So like I have listed here, in this text, it focuses on the nature of the mind, stages of the mind, the modifications of the mind, and how to overcome those modifications of the mind. It also talks about the obstacle to yoga and yoga practice. What are the impediments, like 9 impediments and 5 afflictions? And then very systematically it talks about the Ashtanga yoga. And as you will see, the many other yoga come out of that. Their methods, steps and stages very detailed in the sutras. It also talks about the spiritual power you will gain as you progress on this path, plus the attainment of the highest goal called Kaivalya. This yoga of Patanjali is also referred as Raj Yoga or Royal Yoga. This is purely based on the practice. So as I mentioned that Samkhya philosophy uses 2 main constituents or 2 main principles or 2 main objects to understand the reality. Yoga takes the 2 as is and adds 1 more, and that is super consciousness or supreme consciousness, which you can call it your personal God. So it becomes 3 main components in yoga philosophy instead of 2 in Samkhya. So definition of Prakriti and Purusha stays the same, exactly the same theory. But the special Purusha or Purusha Vishesha, which is the supreme consciousness, is introduced, called Ishvara. You will come to know about the personal God concept of yoga philosophy a little bit further down when I will talk about Vedanta? The God concept in Samkhya and yoga philosophy. Let's dive into the real practices of yoga philosophy. So now I'm going to talk about the Ashtanga yoga practice, which Patanjali mentions as the 8-limb path. This contains The restraint, observances, posture, control of vital force, withdrawal of senses, which leads to concentration, and that leads to meditation, and that finally leads to the total absorption or samadhi. In the second stage, which is 5 observances, the last 3, I'm not going in detail of each of them because most people are familiar with the 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. The last 3, which is the tapas, swadhyay, and ishvara paranidhan. In English, you can call it zeal, study, surrender to God. Together, Patanjali refers as a Kriya Yoga. And if you take all these 8, the first 5 are external practice in nature, or they are called Bahiranga Sadhana. Also, you can technically call it as a Hatha Yoga practice. Though Patanjali does not talk about Hatha Yoga in the Yoga Sutra. The last 3 limbs, which is Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, Patanjali refers as Sanyam. These are internal practices or Antaranga Sadhana. Technically, that is Dhyana Yoga. So, to be clear, the Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga is not the same what Patabhi Joy's Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga is. They are 2 different things. Patanjali Kriya Yoga is not the same what Yogananda's or SRF's Kriya Yoga is. The name sounds similar, but they are not exactly the same. So now you got the understanding about Samkhya, you got an understanding about yoga philosophy. Now let's analyze the differences between Samkhya and yoga philosophy. And then we'll go back to the similarity and then the practices. Okay? So first, the differences. Yoga accepts 3 reality, as you saw, Purusha and Prakriti and Ishvara, that is personal God. But the Samkhya does not accept God. Only 2 principles it accepts. The number 2 is Samkhya primarily emphasizes on knowledge, inquiring the nature of truth. But yoga primarily emphasizes on the practice and the discipline to control the modification of mind.
Being a... Well, actually, there. Sorry. Okay, so being the middle of the road kind of guy, it's like, why can't you do both? Knowledge inquired the nature of truth. I mean, you can... I mean, both of them believe that the suffering and bliss comes from the mind, which in yoga is the modification of the mind, and Samkhya is, well, just mind. It's not a modification of the mind, it's just the mind itself.
The third is yoga uses Samkhya as foundation, but also borrows knowledge from other sources such as Vedanta. So now let's talk about the creator or God in Samkhya philosophy. Samkhya does not accept the existence of God. It gives the following reason. The number 1 is, if existence of law of karma is assumed, then role of God is unnecessary. And if God enforces the consequence of action, then the law of karma is unnecessary.
Unless God is karma, in which they're one and the same, I guess. If existence of law of karma is assumed, then the role of God is unnecessary. Which, I guess so. I mean, unless he decides to change, like, hey, look, karma now. We'll make the exception for this guy. If God enforces consequences of law of action, then karma is unnecessary. But if you see as karma and God as one, then being one and the same, then there's no argument there, I guess.
And then it says if God enforces the consequence, then either God is egoistic or altruistic.
I heard it egotistic, altruistic. I've heard that a very few times, so not very much. Egotistic, though, a lot. So I definitely got to look up altruistic. I've heard it like a few times. Like, honestly, in my entire life, maybe 3 times. So I need to Google that.
And if so, then God won't desire to create a world full of suffering.
If God enforces the consequence, then either God is egotistical or altruistic. If so, God won't desire to create a world full of suffering. Is that what altruistic means then, actually? So, if God enforces the consequence, then either he's egotistical, like he's like, oh, if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to punish you for that. But if he's a good God, then he wouldn't create a world full of suffering, which is, again, the questions that I had whenever I was going through my watching a whole bunch of religious kind of videos, anti-religion, religion videos, like the discussion, should I say, between, again, oh my god, I can't remember his name now anyway, but against scientists and religious people, mostly, you know, Western religion, or actually more, yeah, Western religion. It's like, if God does exist, then why does he demand praise? That's kind of an egotistical thing to do, you know. And the fact that, okay, if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, why does he not create a world where there is no suffering? It's kind of weird. Like, yeah, exactly my arguments from a long time ago.
And then third, it says that there is no proof of the existence of God which can be validated using the valid source of knowledge, like those 6 valid source of knowledge I talked about in the first video.
Ooh, that was some time ago. There's no proof of the existence of gods we can validate using the valid source of knowledge. Well, that is proof is definitely something that we should definitely seek. You know, you can't just believe in anything. You definitely have to seek out proof. I guess the problem with maybe Hinduism and science is the fact that Hinduism allows you to create your own gods and believe your own gods and believe your own experience. So, for example, if you saw, say, pink elephant or something. Sorry, that reminds me of a cartoon. And you say, oh man, I saw a pink elephant. Well, you experienced it, so to you that is true. But everyone else would be like, there is no pink elephant. And you can say, like, no, but I saw it. So then what is reality at that point? You know, it's like, well, I unless someone painted an elephant pink, painted an elephant pink, is there a circus going on? outside of, you know, the painting of an elephant pink, and you don't live in, say, even if you don't live in an elephant country, like, dude, there's no elephants here. How can you have seen the pink elephant? You know, so there's that kind of like where I think in a way, as far as I could tell, Hinduism allows you to believe in what you want, which is honestly, in my opinion, fine too. But I also have to understand reality, as in, because again, our sense organs are not perfect. You know, you can hallucinate, you can see things in the corner of your eye. Sometimes you smell something that's not really there, and you hear things. Trust me, that happens because our sense organs are faulty. I'm not saying they're always faulty, but they can be faulty. Eventually, they become faulty. Glasses is a great example of faulty eyes. But so that's my personal thing. It's the fact that I love the fact that you can believe what you want, and the fact that so long as you're not harming anyone else, you know, believe what you want. You saw a pink elephant, and by all means, you know. I mean, maybe it did go by and I just missed it, but we know we don't live in a country where there's elephants, example. And the fact that I have to realize that there's no pink elephants here, that he could be hallucinating. One of his sense organs might be failing, or his mind might be failing. He might be hallucinating. There might be a drug in him. So I kind of have to find a middle ground between, I guess, the acceptance of what people want to believe and the reality. and the reason why I quote that is because I don't know how to describe that. Not because of the Maya, but because our sense organs are not perfect. So for example, there could literally be a pink elephant flying around here, and the pink elephant has the ability to allow people to see it or not. So this pink elephant could be literally just only allowed that one person to see him or it, and no one else could see it. And this guy's saying, "Hey, look, there's a pink elephant there," and you're looking like, "No, I don't see it." And he's like, "It looks right in front of you. Just touch it," and you're like, "Not seeing it." It's like, "Holy crap, your hands are going through it. That's really weird." And the pink elephant's telling, he's like, "Hey, look, you're the only one who can see me. No one else can see me. No one can touch me. I have that ability." And that could very well be true. Again, that's the reason why reality, because I mean, there could be an alien race out there of pink elephants that has ability to has like a camouflage and a mass spreader thing that allows people to go through them and allow some people to see them. Just saying.
So now let's see what yoga philosophy says about the creator or God. So God is referred as Ishvara in yoga philosophy. It's a unique Purusha or Purusha Vishesha. It's primeval teacher or called Adi Guru. It is also referred as Pranava or primordial sound, Om. The concept of God gives hope to the human beings, the one who is perfect, eternal, all-pervading, free from all karmas, and it is your personal God. Third, it says that when individual soul or Purusha becomes free from all sanskaras, then becomes a liberated soul and merges into the God consciousness. The fourth, it says, when ignorance is dissolved, the duality drops and the perfect union of individual soul happens with Supreme Soul, which is the yoga here, the union of these two, the lower self to the higher self. Thus the individual soul becomes fully liberated from suffering. And the last, it says that existence of Ishvara is Purush Vishesha, can be only known through the scripture. So the practices which is given you first is to identify your true nature. And
can only be known can be known only through the scriptures. Why through only the scriptures though? That seems very like Western religion, where back in the day they used religion to control the population, and most of the population didn't know how to read. So the priest would say, no, I'm not saying all priests, but there are some out there that, would use this, like, since I can read the book and I know the word of God, that that you must do as I say, because you can't read what's in this book. But at least here, hopefully, people can read. So at least you yourself will be able to know the existence of God.
And then through the scriptures you will know what is God. Now let's see the similarity between Samkhya and yoga philosophy. There are 5 major similarities I have listed here. The first one is that both accept 3 valid sources of knowledge, and they are direct perception, inference, and testimony. The second is both accepts the dualistic theory of Purusha and Prakriti. Third, both accepts the ignorance is the cause of suffering. Both emphasizes polishing and controlling the mind. Both uses the rational and practical approach.
Yeah, I thought they did have the manipulation of the mind, or the manipulation he used. But anyways, the manipulation of the mind, polishing and controlling. I think he made it sound like they were different in the difference section.
So let's see what Sankhya and Yoga philosophy talks about the creation or the world. Since yoga is based on Sankhya philosophy, so whole thing comes as the root cause of entire universe is Prakriti, not Purusha. And it is a journey of consciousness or Purusha into the matter or Prakriti. The unmanifested Prakriti is the limitless potential consisting of three fundamental forces called gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas in equilibrium, exactly like I described you before. And the effective contact between the Purusha and Prakriti disturbs the balance of the guna in Prakriti and sets the motion the process of evolution and creation of the world. So that's the theory about the creation.
Actually, sorry, just to bring up this random thing. Funny enough, me and my coworker talked about how the universe is in chaos and it's trying to find balance. We ourselves are chaos. The death of ourselves is balance. Well, I think I said that. He said that. No, he said that we're chaos for sure. But I said our death is balance. Can't remember what he said. We talked about this some time ago. But it's kind of interesting how he's saying that, what's the, is it Prussia? Yeah. Prussia, I believe I'm saying that correctly, is us basically. Us interacting with nature. Pakriti. Pakriti. Oh, good lord. I know he said it so many times and I can't remember how to pronounce it. But yeah, and everything we do, we create chaos in the world. Not to say that's like bad, like me sneezing is chaos in the world. But yeah, we create chaos in the world.
Now let's talk about the individual soul, what Sankhya and Yoga philosophy talk about. Three main things. First is the individual soul or Purusha is the consciousness, and that is his very essence. The soul is eternal, ever pure, ever detached, and all pervading. There are innumerable souls, as many as the living beings. Just to point it out that the Purusha here, individual soul here, is different than what Nyaya and Vaisheshika philosophy talks about. In Nyaya and Vaisheshika, the individual soul does not have their consciousness. The consciousness comes from the mind, but here the individual soul has its own consciousness.
I'm sorry, I'm going to rewind that. I wish I had my little. Fonso talks about non-young the individual soul does not have
their consciousness. The consciousness comes from the mind, but here the individual soul has its own consciousness.
So is this to believe that the mind and body is separate from the soul or consciousness, the duality? As in, so not only is everything else not you, but the physical form that is you is also not you because you are the consciousness. But you're not part of this greater consciousness. You're not a little bubble in that greater consciousness. The Brahman. Brahman. Huh. I would say I'm a little bit more for the fact that the mind. Sorry, I'm gonna rewind it just a little bit again. And I am.
In Nyaya and Vaisheshika,
individual soul does not have.
Individual soul does not have their consciousness. The consciousness comes from the mind.
That is my belief. But he's making it sound like they believe in a soul as well, though.
But here, the individual soul has its own consciousness. So now let's see what Samkhya and Yoga talks about the liberation from suffering. First, it says that due to ignorance, individual soul forgets his true nature, gets involved with evolutes of Prakriti and suffers. And how and when Purusha got into this mess of suffering can never be answered except by stating that it is beginningless but has an end. Since ignorance or aviveka is responsible for this bondage, liberation can come only from the right knowledge, and that's the core of Samkhya philosophy. However, both agree that the right knowledge is attained by following the 8 limbs of yoga, wherein the individual soul is the object of meditation, and that's the core of yoga. So now you understand the yoga principle, Samkhya principles, their similarity, their differences. Now we are to the last stage for the practice. This is also a 3-step practice in which you understand the philosophy, reflect on the philosophy, and then use the Ashtanga yoga practice with consistency, reverence, and non-attachment for a long time in order to get the result. Yoga is basically the practice of Samkhya philosophy in true essence. So this sums up the Samkhya and Yoga philosophy today. I will catch you next in the last 2 Indian philosophies called Mimamsa and Vedanta. So you will know how from pluralism we go to dualism, and then we go to non-dualism, means there will become only one entity.
Wait, so there's still a dualism? Wait, we're in pluralism? Oh good lord. Pluralism? And now we're going, and then the, where's that? It started with an M. Oops. Mimamsa is dualism and Vedanta is non-dualism. Is that what he's saying? I thought this was dualism as well. Because they believe in consciousness and nature. As in dualism. The belief that you are consciousness and everything else is nature. Huh. Unless he means that we have done dualism, now we're going to get into non-dualism, but it doesn't sound like that. At least to me, anyway. Alright. So that's my reaction to what is Samkhya and Yoga philosophy. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.